Welcome to the Bus Stop Stranger, Postcard English Stories. Have you ever met someone who seems so ordinary, yet their presence leaves a lasting impression? Someone you can't stop thinking about even after just one brief encounter? In today's story, I'm going to share with you a chance meeting at a bus stop. A moment that seemed simple at first, but soon unfolded into something much more mysterious and meaningful. The Bus Stop Stranger is a story about unexpected connections, about the quiet moments in life that can change the way we see the world. It's a tale of waiting, of searching for something, or maybe someone we didn't even know we needed. So, grab your coffee, relax, and let's step into this quiet, reflective story together. And remember, sometimes the most profound changes in our lives happen in the most ordinary places. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell for more stories like this. Let's explore English through stories that touch the heart. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when I first saw him. The kind of morning where the air was crisp but not cold, and the city streets hummed with the usual rush. I was waiting at the bus stop, the familiar stop outside the small cafe I often visited. My routine hadn't changed in years. Coffee in hand, thoughts scattered in all directions, eyes drifting lazily over the crowd of commuters. Nothing out of the ordinary, until he arrived. He stood at the far end of the bus stop, hands in his coat pockets, his face hidden behind the brim of his hat. There was nothing remarkable about his appearance. He was an average man, maybe in his late 30s, slightly disheveled, but there was something about the way he stood there that made me pause. It wasn't his clothes. It wasn't the way he carried himself. It was the stillness around him. Like he wasn't just waiting for a bus. Like he was waiting for something else, something deeper. I caught myself staring for a moment, but then I looked away, pretending to adjust the straps on my bag as if nothing had happened. I wasn't one to be intrigued by strangers, especially at a bus stop, but there was something that made me feel uneasy, a quiet tug at the back of my mind. I brushed it off. Just a feeling, I thought. It's nothing. The bus pulled up with its usual screech, and I shuffled toward the door, blending into the crowd. But as I boarded, I couldn't help but glance back at him. He was still standing there, unmoving. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, and for a moment, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. But the bus doors closed before I could dwell on it, and I was swept away in the current of passengers. It was a routine I had followed for years. Wake up, get dressed, take the bus, go to work, come home. And yet, that stranger, standing still at the bus stop, had made me question the simplicity of my days. I couldn't stop thinking about him. The next morning, I was at the bus stop again, as punctual as ever. I told myself I was just going about my usual routine, but there was a part of me that hoped I might see him again. It was silly, of course. I had no reason to care about a man I'd only seen once. But there was something magnetic about him, something that made me curious. And then, as if by fate, there he was again. Same coat, same hat, standing in the same spot. This time I didn't look away. I found myself watching him more closely, wondering who he was, what brought him to this particular bus stop at this particular time. There was something hauntingly familiar about the way he stood, like a ghost waiting for a long-forgotten train. As I took my place at the stop, I tried not to make it obvious that I was watching him. but then he turned. His eyes locked with mine again, and this time I didn't look away. He didn't smile, didn't nod. He just looked at me, as if waiting for something, as if he knew something I didn't. I felt my heart race, but I forced myself to look down at my phone, pretending to check the time. The bus would be here soon, and I would be fine. Everything would go back to normal. But as I looked back up, I saw him move toward me, slowly, almost reluctantly. And then, in a voice that was soft but steady, he spoke. "Do you believe in coincidences?" he asked. I blinked, momentarily taken aback by the sudden question. I didn't answer immediately. What was I supposed to say? Of course, I believed in coincidences, but how could this be a coincidence? A stranger standing at the same bus stop, day after day, looking at me as if he had been expecting me all along. I don't know, I said finally, unsure of myself. I mean, of course things happen by chance, but this doesn't feel like a coincidence. He nodded as if he had been expecting that answer. It doesn't, he said quietly. But here we are. Anyway, his words hung in the air, thick with unspoken meaning. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random meeting. There was something more, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The bus arrived just in time to break the tension. People began to shuffle toward the doors, and I moved along with them, instinctively keeping my distance from him. But as I boarded, I turned for a moment to find him still standing there, his eyes following me. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for something, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was me. That evening, I replayed the encounter in my head. I had to admit to myself that I had been more than curious about him. I had been drawn to him. The way he spoke, the way he made me question everything, and those words he had spoken. "Do you believe in coincidences?" kept echoing in my mind. The next few days blurred together. I couldn't stop thinking about him, the stranger at the bus stop. I wondered who he was, why he came to that same spot every morning, and why he spoke to me like he knew something I didn't. I began to arrive at the bus stop a little earlier, hoping to catch a glimpse of him before the crowd gathered. The morning routine, which had once felt like a mechanical repetition, now seemed more like a waiting game. I watched the flow of people, scanning the crowd for his familiar silhouette. Some mornings, I would see him from a distance, but he never approached. He was always standing there, looking like he was waiting, not for the bus, but for something more. It was a Thursday when he appeared again. It was earlier than usual, and I was already there, sipping my coffee, trying to steady my racing thoughts. I knew I should stop thinking about him. It was just a stranger, I told myself. But that didn't stop the curiosity. He was standing a few feet away, his head slightly bowed as if in thought. His coat was the same, and his hat was pulled low over his eyes. But this time, as I looked at him, I couldn't shake the feeling that I knew him, that somehow, in some way, our paths had crossed before. I had to know. I couldn't keep coming to the bus stop, day after day, wondering about him. So I stood up and walked toward him. "Hi," I said, my voice unsteady. I had no idea what I was going to say next, but I had to break the silence. He turned slowly, and for the first time, I noticed the sadness in his eyes. It was fleeting, a shadow that disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared, but it was there. His gaze softened when he saw me, but he didn't smile. Instead, he nodded slightly, acknowledging my presence. "Hi," he said, his voice quiet, almost like he was reluctant to speak. I stood there, unsure of what to say. The words didn't come easily. I didn't know why I had approached him, why I was standing in front of this man I knew nothing about. "You've been here every day, haven't you?" I asked, trying to fill the silence. It felt like an odd question, but it was the first thing that came to mind. He nodded. "Yes, every day." "Why?" I asked, my curiosity getting the better of me. "Why do you come here, every day?" He looked at me for a moment, his eyes searching mine. It felt like he was deciding whether or not to answer. Finally, he spoke. "Because I'm waiting," he said simply. "Waiting for what?" I asked, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at the bus, which was just pulling up to the stop. People began to shuffle forward, ready to board. I waited for him to step forward too, but he didn't move. He just stood there, watching the people get on the bus, his gaze distant. "I'm waiting for something," he said after a long pause. "I'm waiting for something to change." I didn't know what to make of his words. They hung in the air, heavy with meaning, yet elusive. I wanted to ask more questions, but the bus doors opened and the moment was slipping away. I had no idea what he meant by waiting for something to change, but somehow I knew I wasn't going to get an answer today. As the crowd around us began to move, I stepped back, giving him space to get on the bus. But he didn't follow. He stayed where he was, standing still as the others boarded. "Are you coming?" I asked, my voice soft. He shook his head, his expression unreadable. "Not today." I felt an odd sense of disappointment as I climbed onto the bus. As the doors closed behind me, I glanced back at him through the window. He was still standing there, unmoving, just watching the bus pull away. I didn't know what to think anymore. He had said so little, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that he was somehow waiting for me, or at least waiting for me to understand. I couldn't explain it, but something about that moment made me feel like I was a part of his story, and he was a part of mine. The following days were a blur of the same routine. I arrived at the bus stop early, as usual, and waited for him, but he didn't show up. At least, not at the same time. I would watch the crowd, scanning each face for his familiar silhouette, but he never appeared. Each day that passed without him felt like a small loss. I started to question whether I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe he had just been a random stranger, someone I had attached meaning to because I was looking for something in my own life. The thought made me uneasy, and I tried to dismiss it. But then on the 5th day, he was back. It was early in the morning, and the streets were still wet from a light rain. I was sitting at the bus stop, watching the droplets slide down the glass, when I saw him. He was standing at the far end of the platform, as usual, looking exactly the same as before. His coat, his hat, his stillness. Nothing had changed. But I had. Something had shifted inside me, something I couldn't explain. I felt a sense of urgency, a need to understand what this strange connection was between us. I couldn't keep pretending that he was just another random person at the bus stop. I walked up to him again, this time with a different resolve. "I've been thinking," I began, my voice steady this time. "I don't think this is just a coincidence. I think we're supposed to meet." He didn't respond immediately. For a moment, he just looked at me, as though weighing my words. Finally, he nodded. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe we are." He didn't elaborate further, and I didn't press. I didn't need to. His words, though simple, carried a weight that made my chest tighten. The bus arrived, but this time neither of us moved. We stood there, facing each other in the rain as the other passengers filed onto the bus without us. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice low but clear. "I'm waiting for something to change," he said, the words echoing in the quiet of the morning. "And what is it that's supposed to change?" I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. He didn't answer right away, but then he looked at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. "Everything," he said softly. "Everything." And then, for the first time, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the mist of the morning. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do. But in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just waiting for the bus anymore. I was waiting for something more, something that neither of us had words for yet. The next day I returned to the bus stop, not because I was expecting anything, but out of habit. But deep inside, I couldn't shake off the strange feeling. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the words he said, about the silence between us. I looked around, but this time I didn't actively search for him. I told myself that he was just a stranger, and I shouldn't fixate on such a brief moment. But my eyes couldn't resist. They wandered over the faces in the crowd, hoping to see him again. And then, as if everything had been set up by fate, I saw him. This time he wasn't standing at the far end, motionless like before. He was walking toward me, slowly, unhurried, as though he'd been waiting for this moment, just as I had. "You're here again," I said, my voice trembling. This time, I didn't feel the same anxiety as before. I felt ready. He nodded. His face didn't show much emotion, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet understanding that I couldn't describe with words. "Because I can't go anywhere else," he said. "I can only be here." His words took me by surprise. I wanted to ask more, to understand more, but I couldn't. There was something so deep in his eyes that made me unable to break the silence. "So, what are you waiting for?" I asked, unable to stop myself. He didn't answer right away. He glanced off into the distance, as though searching for something in the space before him. After a long pause, he turned back to me, his expression filled with something that looked like determination, like he had decided to share something very important. "I'm waiting for a change, but not the change of the world. I'm waiting for a change in myself." I was taken aback by his answer, a change not for the world around him, but for himself. I began to understand that his story wasn't just about a stranger at a bus stop. It was about a journey, a search, a waiting that only he could explain. "What are you searching for?" I asked, my voice now softer, as though I had stepped into a story I didn't fully understand. He smiled faintly, a smile rarely seen on his face. "I'm searching for myself," he said. "I've grown tired of what I've become. I need to change, to find who I truly am." His words weren't what I expected, but they reached into a part of me I hadn't realized was there. I could feel the pain in his voice. He wasn't just waiting for the bus. He was waiting for an opportunity to change his life, to break free from the shadow of who he had become. "Have you found it yet?" I asked, unsure if I should continue the conversation. He shook his head. "Not yet, but I know it will come, and when it does, I won't let it pass me by." At that moment, I didn't feel the strangeness I had felt before. Instead, I felt a kind of resonance. Maybe I too was looking for something, Like him, I had gone through moments of feeling lost, of not knowing where I was going. But now I understood that change is a journey, and sometimes we need to stand still to see it. The bus arrived, and the other passengers started boarding. I stood still, unsure of what to do next. But before he left, he turned to me for one last look, his eyes sending a message I couldn't quite decipher. "Don't forget to find yourself," he said, and then he turned away and got on the bus. This time I didn't follow him with my eyes. I didn't need to know where he was going. I just knew that I had shared a moment with this stranger, a moment that would change the way I looked at life and myself. In the following days, I didn't see him again. I didn't search for him. Instead, I began searching for myself, just like he had said. I couldn't explain the feeling in my heart, but I felt like I was changing, and maybe he was too. I didn't know if we would ever meet again, but that didn't matter anymore. That moment at the bus stop was enough for me to understand that sometimes we need to stand still, wait a little, to realize something bigger,